Okay, so now I'm going to record my first track in Garageband. It's a very, very simple process. I'm just going to record some very basic drums. We saw in the previous video that I selected this Portland drum kit. It's just a nice sounding little kit that will fit what I want to play very nicely. You can audition all the other drum kits and have a listen through to them. Now, before I do this, I'm going to turn on cycle mode. Now, we can turn on cycle mode by clicking on cycle mode here, or we can press the C key on the keyboard. Or we can click in the cycle line up here using the cursor. That's 3 different ways to turn on cycle mode. Cycle mode is a really useful recording tool and trick for recording drums because it will play from bar 1 to the end of bar 4 and then cycle back round and round and round until I tell it to stop. Okay, now that means I can play the bass and snare drum and then go back and record the hi-hats on top of that, and that should work really well. It's also important that I have my counting selected and my metronome selected so I can play along as closely in time to those as possible. We're going to record at 120 beats per minute and in 4/4. We can change those very quickly and easily if we wanted to, but at the moment I'm just going to try and keep things simple. Now, the drum kits. On a keyboard, the drum kit is what's called mapped. Now, a drum kit map means that the notes of the drums are actually all in the same place. So regardless of what keyboard you play or what software you happen to be using, the bottom C on the keyboard will be a bass drum, a kick drum. Okay. Then the next 2 notes, the D and E above that C, will be snare drums. The 2 variations of a snare drum. And then we have tom-toms from F to top D. Okay, and then above that we have some cymbals and some other useful things. The other most important ones are the hi-hats. Now an F sharp just above the bottom C. That's the first one of the group of 3 black notes. That's a closed hi-hat. Okay, then we have an A flat is a foot closed hi-hat, and a B flat just above that is an open hi-hat. So an open hi-hat will be cancelled out as it should be by a closed hi-hat. It's all very clever and all very useful. But like I said, that's called a map, and every keyboard and piece of software adheres to that map. So regardless of where you put this, it will still have roughly the same sounds. It will sound like a different bass drum if we use a different drum kit, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But it still has the same sounds across the board. Right, so let's make a recording. It's very simple. All we do is click on the record button, so the red circle, as usual in all DAWs and every tape recorder since 1943 or something like that. The red dot is the record button. So I'll click and record, we'll get a 1 bar count in, and then I'll just start recording bass and snare, a very basic pattern. There we go. Now, hopefully you've noticed what I've done. We're going to correct that in a second, but let's just put the hi-hats on top of this. Okay. I could start recording halfway through it, but I want to do a 4-bar run. So here we go. 2, 3, 4. Okay. So there's my drums. Now, I've recorded them, but it kind of sounds a little bit like I'm not the best drummer in the world. And to be honest, I'm not. Because at the moment, it's slightly out of time. So what we're going to do is use a very possibly the most basic of all the digital audio workstation functions. And it's a function called Quantize. Quantize. And what quantization is it's just error correction. And in terms of what I'm doing here, my error is the fact that I haven't played particularly well in time. Now, in order to see that, I'm going to double click on this region, as it's called, to open up the piano roll editor. So I'll just scroll this up here like this, and you can see what we've got here is all the notes that I just played. Okay, so if I scroll back to bar 1, you'll see my problem because I've actually played the first kick drum before beat 1. I anticipated the beat. So that means that needs to be time corrected. Now it's all in relation to this grid, so you can see that little block there, so that each of these little blocks here relates to 1 semiquaver or 1/16th note. Okay, and you can actually very clearly see that I actually played it even worse than I thought I'd played it, because you can see that a lot of these notes are very much in anticipation of the beat. Okay, however, I was doing it on purpose, I promise. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to quantize these, and here's the quantize function here. Now, Normally what we do is just hit the Q button. Okay, we go up here and we click on that and we highlight it and we hit the Q button, Q for Quantize. But I just want to show you what happens here. I want you to see it happening on the grid. So first things first, we have to select all the notes. Easiest way of doing that is to hold down Command and select A, and you see all of the notes become highlighted. Okay, I'll just undo that again, and you'll see, I'll just one more time. So I'll, hang on a second. There we go. So they're all highlighted. If I unhighlight them, then I press Command A, and they all become pale green instead of darker green. Okay. Now we're ready to quantize all of these notes. I just want you to watch what happens to them on the grid as I quantize them. Okay. They have to be selected in order for this to happen, or we just select that block and hit the Q, because there's the Q button there, and they're going to quantize to the nearest semiquaver. That's what 1/16th note means. So hit Q and wallop. Now you can see they're now all absolutely on the grid, and now it actually sounds as though I've taken some drum lessons. And it cycles round again just like that. Okay, so that's a very simple process. Now I'm just going to undo that, so that's them unquantized, and I'm just going to show the quantization function once again, just using the normal edit screen up here. So if that is highlighted, if I hit the Q function, then that's them being quantized. Let's just have a listen. Okay, and then if I go to the edit menu and select undo parameter change, which in this case is quantize, you'll hear it out of time again. Okay, then we can actually hit Q on the fly. Okay, so sounding much better. Now I used a term there very quickly called on the fly, and on the fly just means it's something you can do whilst the sequencer is actually playing. So if I hit Q whilst the sequencer is playing, it will quantize that region. Okay, so that's 4 bars of drums recorded. I'm now going to introduce the next track. We'll start recording some bass or some keyboard.